Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, a UK-based Star Wars podcast with in-depth discussions and analysis sprinkled with some silliness. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
I'm Kat Rizielka.
I'm Star Wars Iain.
And I'm Jason Hondo Ling.
We are back with a brand new episode of Star Wars. We are back to deep dive review Star Wars Tales of the Underworld. So again, if you have not watched Star Wars Tales of the Underworld, pause the podcast right now, go watch it, and then come back. Because we're going to be deep diving it, we're going to be getting sweaty about it. Lots of spoilers. And yes, I'm very excited. It's been out for over a month now. It came out on May the 4th. Ever since I watched it, I've been excited to talk about it. Let's just go to you first, Kat, before we dive into all the minor, the deep details, but just overall thoughts, like how were you feeling when you finally sat down to watch this season of animated shorts? Did it deliver?
Oh, it certainly delivered a great dose of new Star Wars on May the 4th. And it was the perfect way to end the Star Wars celebration on that day and across the weekend. So I thought they were very interesting stories and not what I was expecting when they announced they were going to be about Asajj Ventress and Cad Bane. There was definitely an element of surprise to each episode. And it did add a lot of depth, especially to Cad Bane's character, which I definitely didn't see coming.
It certainly did. Iain, over to you. Did you watch this on May the 4th? Were you waiting impatiently for it to drop? And what were your thoughts when you finally got into this succulent meal?
I did wait. Yeah, I was up. We were lucky in the UK. Star Wars Day was on Sunday, which is the same for everyone. But so I waited up to watch them. Really good. I enjoyed the Asajj Ventress arc. I was really quite surprised how much I enjoyed the Cad Bane arc. I didn't know there was that much depth for the character to be added to, but they really did a good job and actually genuinely caught my attention with the Cad Bane arc and how he obviously falls into a life of crime and what that entails. So I was really pleasantly surprised with both arcs.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I mean, we'll dive into details soon, but I think Cad Bane, I'm not saying he's one-dimensional because he's not, but like when we meet him in Clone Wars, and in the Book of Boba Fett, he's very much like Cad Bane is Cad Bane. He doesn't really develop much, if that makes sense. But here we see sort of all of that development that got Cad Bane to where he is when we meet him, as this sort of gunslinger bounty hunter for hire who, follows the credits almost, you could say, and do anything for the credits. Jace, over to you. Were you an eager beaver, just like Iain there, waiting for them to come online straight away? And again, like, what were your thoughts when you finally got a very tasty taste of the new Star Wars animation?
I'll be honest, I was really bad and really unusual for me in that I completely forgot about these until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I suddenly thought, oh, you idiot. I've been watching all the Star Wars films, and I suddenly thought, oh, I haven't watched Tales of the Underworld yet. And I sat down and I just binge-watched them. As everyone knows, I love animated Star Wars. Asajj Ventress is one of my favourite characters, so I was really looking forward to her story. And I don't think it disappointed. And then as Cad Bane, I wasn't quite so excited about, but I enjoyed the story. I thought it was interesting what they did. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Did anybody watch the episodes early? I think 2 episodes aired early on Fortnite, I believe. Did anyone know about that?
Good grief,
I
no,
did, I tried, but it was terrible. I couldn't do it. I don't even have Fortnite. I had to download it on my Xbox and that. No, it was. You didn't even could watch it full screen. You had to watch it on a little screen in the game. It wasn't good.
That's wild. Kat, did you have an experience there?
No, I mean, I have Fortnite on my PS5, but I didn't realize they were on there. I didn't see that bit of Disney marketing.
I didn't. I heard about it on another podcast. To be fair, so essentially, yeah, like the first 2 episodes, if you did something in Fortnite, you could watch them within the game. Before May the 4th, there's like a little bit of in-game promo. So I'm new to Fortnite. I do have the Star Wars Battle Pass, and I've been playing that, but I'm not that involved. I was trying to watch episodes early on it. But yeah, I thought it's very fun and very out of the box, I suppose, creative wise for marketing. Although very niche, you could say. Let's dive right in. So the first arc, let's just start. Tales of the Underworld. It follows Tales of the Jedi season 1 and Tales of the Empire season 2. This is the third series in this sort of Tales anthology of Star Wars animated shorts. As usual, we get 2 separate arcs. As we've said, the first arc is following the adventures of Asajj of Ventress. All the story was by Dave Filoni, and all 3 episodes are written by Matt Michnovetz. 3 different directors. So the first episode, A Way Forward, was directed by Saul Ruiz. Episode 2, Friends, was directed by Stuart Lee. And then episode 3, One Warrior to Another, was directed by Nathaniel Villanueva. Again, all names we hear about when we watch sort of Clone Wars and Star Wars animation. Quick run through the story. They do a nice little sort of tidy up of the aftermath of the events of Dark Disciple, which is of course the Clone Wars novel based on the scripts by Katie Lucas, which would have been in the next season of the Clone Wars had it not been cancelled when it was cancelled after the Disney acquisition of the company. And it sort of ties up subtly, I would say, the events of sort of Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Vos and sort of what's going on there. And, we do see Mother Talzin and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then we sort of go into sort of what Asajj is doing. And, it's during the Empire's reign. She ends up helping a young Padawan who is searching for the path, which of course has been heavily linked in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And as we know, in Obi-Wan Kenobi series, we do have Quinlan Voss's name is sort of is written inside the walls of the path as someone who's been there. And they end up escaping after fighting and killing an Inquisitor. After that, Ventress and the Padawan, who we learn is called Lyko Strada, they meet with some former bounty hunters, acquaintances of Asajj's, that is Latz Razzie, and she has a droid assassin called C-21 High Singer, who's pretty cool. In return for information about the path, Razzie enlists Ventress and Lyko's help in stealing an Imperial shield relay unit. The heist goes not very well. It fails, and Razzie and High Singer attempt to collect the bounty on Lyko instead. Ventress stops them and forces Razzie to give them coordinates to the path. And then in the third and final episode of Asajj's arc, we end up on a desert planet where Ventress and Lyko encounter a former separatist and his granddaughter who have been fighting a tribe of raiders over a water source. When the raiders attack again, Lyko is able to communicate with them. He and Ventress convince the man to stop fighting and share the water with the tribe. One of the tribesmen directs the pairs to the path, but they decide not to go and instead continue travelling together. I mean, there's a lot to unpack. We said off air, sort of, for some reason, when I watched this the first time, I thought it was like maybe 4 episodes per arc, but when I went back and watched them for this episode to make notes, there was only 3, and that's because I think a lot of story is packed in them. I suppose I'll go to you first, Kat. Sort of, what was your thoughts on how they tied up the events of Dark Disciple to then kickstart us into this adventure?
I was sort of happy with it, but also a little bit frustrated, which I'll explain now. But I was absolutely happy that it followed basically almost exactly the ending of Dark Disciple of Obi-Wan Kenobi comes with Quinlan Vos to bring Asajj home to the Night Sisters and place her into the sacred waters. And that is exactly what happens in the book. Obi-Wan is sort of this very silent support for Quinlan because they are very good friends. But this idea that then Mother Talzin says to Asajj, you have to give up what you most desire to earn back your life. I'm just... I don't trust Mother Talzin because she has lied so many times throughout the Clone Wars, and I did think that Asajj following her words was just a little bit frustrating in the sense that she thinks she has to give up Quinlan, whereas I don't think that's like her greatest desire. Yes, she loves Quinlan, but if you actually look at Asajj's character arc, what she's most desired her entire life is her freedom. Freedom from being persecuted, freedom from slavery, freedom from always having a master telling her what to do. And in a way, that is kind of what she gives up because she isn't free on Tatooine. And when LIGO comes around, she kind of dedicates herself to him. So she is never really free. But in her mind, she thinks she's given up Quinlan. And I just want Star Wars characters who are a couple to be happy for once. It's honestly getting really repetitive, but they are always being separated by events, or in this case, Mother Talzin being very enigmatic and mysterious.
Star Wars is tragedy, as they say, but maybe one day we'll get a happy ending for a couple. Ian, over to you. I know you very much love the canon junkie, as we say. What was your thoughts on how they tied in sort of the events at the end of Dark Disciple to sort of catapult Asajj into the current canon?
Yeah, I really liked it. Like I said, it's basically the closing scenes of the novel, which is really cool to see. I also think that the animation has made another jump again in terms of quality. I thought Quinlan Vos looked incredible, so did Obi-Wan. Moving forward into the episodes, I really like the dynamic between Lyko and who I was convinced was Petro from the Clone Wars from the Gathering arc, but it's not. They do look a bit similar, but I was convinced that was going to be the case. I really like their dynamic. I like how he starts off irritating her. You can tell she's quite irritated by him, and then they obviously grow to respect one another. And then she takes him under her wing, which is really cool. I won't go over what Kat said about the Quinlan Vos stuff and all that type of thing. Mother Talzin. I really like the look of the Inquisitor. Another cool Inquisitor brought into the Tales series that gets killed off pretty easily. I like seeing Latarazi back and T-21 Highsinger from the Clone Wars. They were in Boba Fett's crew, Crate's Claw, which is really cool. And yeah, I really enjoyed the arc. Overall, it's up there with some of my favourite ones of the Tales so far. But yeah, I know I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of, and I like the fact that they were stealing Imperial shield relays for the Star Destroyers, which looked under construction. The only question I had was I'm not sure where this falls, whether this is post Bad Batch season 3 or pre Bad Batch season 3. It'd be interesting to see. And also I'd really like to see more of the path. I like them in Obi-Wan Kenobi. I really like them in Jedi Fallen Order as well. Not Fallen Order, sorry, my bad. Survivor. I think there's potential there for a show to delve into the path and all that type of stuff. And I do think they're setting Asajj Ventress up for something because they brought her back in the Bad Batch and they've given her this. I do think it'd be weird now if we just never saw her. Potentially, could she be in Maul Shadow Lord? Who knows?
Quite possibly. The stealing the shield relay for the Star Destroyer reminded me a bit of the beginning of Andor. How I know it's not the same thing he has. Obviously, it's very different, but how he has something Imperial that's sent up to a Star Destroyer and how it's very valuable. It's sort of it took me back to that and how maybe rebel cells and people who maybe don't like the Empire are trying to gather things that's going to hopefully help them combat the might of the Imperial fleet and the Imperial Star Destroyers. So I thought that was pretty cool. Jace, over to you. Obviously, just what's your thoughts on sort of the beginning of this arc and sort of how it tied up the ends of Dark Disciple, and obviously how it sort of catapults Asajj Ventress into this timeline.
Yeah, for me, obviously, Mother Talzin and all of the sorcery rather than magic that she wields and has in the past, for me, was the perfect way of satisfactorily explaining what happened with Asajj. It was great to see Quinlan Voss and Obi-Wan Kenobi delivering her. Um, and, it was interesting then that she had to make this decision in order to be brought back, which obviously Asajj has been through so much. You'd almost think she'd want the rest, but no, I really enjoyed that they tied that into her past, and then obviously the Ventress that we see when she's working like in this strange situation where she meets Lyco. It's I don't know. It was the Asajj that we saw almost in the Bad Batch. Following on from what Ian said, I think I'm pretty certain that this is pre Bad Batch. So obviously she is not long after she's been revived, so to speak. But prior to her meeting them and having this issue, where she looked at Omega. So it was interesting. I think this was her first real chance of seeing a young Jedi and making the sort of decisions that she made. You know, she she'd been betrayed by the Sith already, but she wasn't. She's not the sort of person that would fall in line with the Jedi. So Asajj Ventress falls very much in the middle. So it was obviously quite interesting to pair her up with a young surviving Jedi, because it wasn't a natural fit for her. But that's part of the thing. Asajj is never in a comfortable position, but she's a survivor and she'll find a way of making good what's thrown at her. And I think this set it up. And obviously the fight with the Inquisitor. Let's face it, if anyone's going to defeat an Inquisitor, it's going to be Asajj Ventress.
Speaking of the Inquisitor, Ian, do you know which Inquisitor this is? Do they have a name, a number? Or
Oh,
do you know which Jedi they were?
I don't think so. I'm just consulting the Star Wars databank, but I don't think. I think he was just unnamed Inquisitor. To be fair, he had a cool look. We've never seen him before, but no, I'm not really too sure if he had a name. He looked cool though. He looked cool in whatever he was doing.
Certainly did, and I think obviously this is now in the animation bank, so hopefully we see more adventures of this Inquisitor. Would be pretty cool. Kat, let's go to you. What was your thoughts on Asajj's decision making? Like, her first decision to help the Padawan out, and then obviously then form a friendship, a bond with the Padawan, and sort of what was your thoughts on, throughout the arc? I suppose Ventress, she stands by like against her friends, Razzie and Heisinger, and then she stands with them again at the end when she waits for him to come back from where he was going to go on the path. And what do you make on her decision as well not to join the path, where maybe that's where she could have met Quinlan?
I think it shows how much she's really grown as a character, because we saw her turning over a new leaf in the final seasons of the Clone Wars, where she becomes a bounty hunter. Then she helps the Jedi in Dark Disciple to try to take out Count Dooku. And by having this second chance, I think she's definitely reevaluating what's important to her and what she wants from life. I mean, she says she wants this quiet life, but when Leica comes into the picture, she immediately helps him. She can see that he's a bit awkward and fumbling around. He's not going to survive by himself. And I think that probably reminds her of her own past, where she did have a Jedi Master, but then when he was killed, she had no one to support her. She had no one to help her, and that's how she ended up under the influence of Count Dooku. So she probably sees a lot of herself in this young Padawan and doesn't want the same things that happened to her happen to someone else. I think while she has served as a dark side apprentice, while she's served as a bounty hunter, Asajj Ventress has pretty strong morals. When she decides to make a decision, she really sticks to it. And I really liked seeing her as this sort of mental position and guiding Leica to escape the Imperials on Tatooine, try to blend in and not be caught. So it really shows how far she's come, because the Asajj Ventress at the start of the Clone Wars would never have done that at all. She never would have associated with the Jedi. As for not joining the path, again, it's part of Asajj's character. I think she's been part of organizations. She has served master after master, and she is jaded by life, even though she has definitely turned over a new leaf and chosen a brighter destiny for herself. She is still jaded by the things that have happened to her. She's still quite cynical, and I think she doesn't want to have the opportunity to possibly be betrayed again or open herself up to hurt again. She's only just opened herself up to Leica. So to join the path, I think, is too early a step for her to take. I think there is a possibility that she could join it in the future, but that again, that requires growth, that requires healing, and in this current moment, Asajj Ventress is still very much a lone wolf. She doesn't want to work with others, and it makes sense if you look at everything that's happened to her. So I think it was everything that happened across her journey does really make sense once you understand her character from the Clone Wars.
Indeed. Ian, any sort of closing thoughts on Asajj's story and the decisions she makes?
I think it's a great precursor to figure out what the character is going to do next. Like I said, I don't think this will be the last time we see her. I think everything she did in the show made sense, like Kat says, based on her character. But I do think we will see her again, potentially in more Shadow Lord, because it would make a nice difference. Maul, obviously, a Sith apprentice who keeps going down the dark path, and Asajj, a Sith acolyte / apprentice who tries to better herself. So I think we could potentially see her in that.
Jace, any closing thoughts on sort of Ventress's decision making and sort of where this puts her post this series?
Yeah, obviously, with this and with what we see in the Bad Batch, I think Asajj is going on a journey that I'm hoping we will get to see, where, obviously she's starting to find her own path, but it doesn't fit in with what everyone else would, Jedi or Sith, would necessarily want her to do. So I think it'd be really interesting to follow her story and find out, how she finds her way without becoming part of either Sith or Jedi, but still with using her powers. And I think working with young survivors. I think there's a lot that we could get out of the character of Asajj Ventress, and I hope they do come up with something. Obviously, so far all we've got is the announcement of the Maul series, but animation, as we've said in the past, is something that they can use in a way of telling stories that they might not necessarily want to invest as much in for a film or TV series. So, yeah, Asajj Ventress, I think we will see more of her, and I think this is a precursor to that.
I want to talk about the title. So it's called Tales of the Underworld. And then we get an arc about Asajj Ventress. And obviously we have her interacting with the Underworld when in episode 2 when they interact with the bounty hunters, Lats Razzie and C21 High Singer. But other than that, like do we feel that this arc fits in a Tales of the Underworld series? Or would this fit maybe in a different type of title? I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Kat.
I think it does make sense to an extent if you think about Asajj was a bounty hunter, so she has these ties to the underworld. That's why we see the brilliant cameos of Razi and C21. But in a way, because of the timeline they set it at during the reign of the Empire and when the Jedi are having to hide or seek out the path, she is in a way part of the underworld because she is going against the law. Jedi are illegal, Force users are illegal, and what she's doing by hiding like her is also against the law. So she is technically part of the underworld, but in a more roundabout fashion, in the sense that she's not directly a bounty hunter, but she's more this mercenary type who is, in the eyes of the Empire, committing a crime just for who she is. So to me, it fitted. But in a future series, I think if she were to appear again, it would need to be something more related to either the rebellion, the path, or something to do with the Jedi to an extent.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think this is very much sort of like this arc is sort of the end of her ties to the underworld. Now she's going to sort of be focused on something different, which is, of course, her friendship and mentorship she has with Lyko. Over to you, Ian. What's your thoughts on, I suppose, what we've talked about there? If you have any thoughts on how it links to the underworld, but also, do you think there's room for sort of, this is the era of the Empire. Is there room for Ventress and Lyko to interact with other Jedi survivors, maybe? And obviously, we all know who the biggest Jedi is going to become Luke Skywalker, okay, in a few years. So, do we feel that there's maybe potential there for an encounter?
There's potential. I probably don't see Asajj and Luke interacting. I think we might have seen that in the story thing. I could potentially see her popping up, especially if they're going to follow the path storyline in Jedi Survivor, or whatever it is, Jedi 3, whatever it's called. Uh, as for like Tales of the Underworld, it kind of makes sense. Like you said, you get the Lats Razzie and the bounty hunter type thing. I think it was called like Tales of the Path because they're looking for the path. It could have worked, but yeah, no, I think it worked in a broad sense. Yeah.
Jace, any final thoughts on anything we've discussed then? Any final thoughts on this arc for Asajj Ventress?
Just really that it's given me a taster. I really want to see more. I'd already wanted to see more of her story after the Bad Batch. It was one single episode. I think with these 3 episodes, they were good, but I want more. And Asajj is a character that can draw in a lot of other characters, but also has the potential to create a lot more as well along the way. I think she'd be a great protagonist for a series.
Moving on from that arc, our second arc is, of course, everybody's favourite bounty hunter, Cad Bane. So again, this one was 3 episodes. So we had again all stories by Dave Filoni, all writing was done by Matt Michnozovic, and again the same 3 directors. So Saul Ruiz did the first episode of the arc, The Good Life. Stuart Lee did the second, A Good Turn, and Nathaniel Villanueva did the third and final one, One Good Deed. Essentially, we learned that Cad Bane was essentially called Colby, and he was one half of a pair of young orphans, Colby and Nero, and sort of the survivor on the crime-ridden streets of Juro, sort of the scavenging and the stealing, having fun as well, I suppose, even though their situation's not the greatest. A gangster named Laszlo gives them some money to spend on food. He offers them more to do a job for him. Nero's reluctant, but Colby agrees for a higher price. The orphans are sort of using their street smarts. They sort of cause a distraction that allows Laszlo and his gang to rob the place. Um, and they make an escape. Colby ends up escaping, so Cad Bane escapes, but his friend Nero is caught by the police. We then jump forward to Colby being an adult. He's now took the name on it as Cad Bane. He returns to Juro with his girlfriend Aaron after Laszlo's killed by the marshal there. He warns Nero, who is now the deputy marshal, to stay out of the way. Bane lures out the marshal, who tells Nero to stay away. Nero goes away and accidentally distracts the marshal, allowing Bane to kill him. Aaron is injured in the crossfire, wanting to save Bane's life. Aaron disarms him so Nero can arrest him. And then, years after Bane was arrested, he's released from prison on a technicality and returns to Juro. In that time, Nero has become the marshal, married Aaron, and had a son named Isaac. Or Isaac, that's just the Geordie and me calling him Isaac. Apologies on that one. Nero ignores warnings to leave town and insists that he can handle Bane. He confronts Bane and reveals that Aaron died years earlier. Bane kills Nero in front of Isaac, or Isaac, when Bane realizes his own biological child, and then leaves to continue his life as a bounty hunter. This was a lot to unpack, and it was a lot to unpack, and it was a lot more sort of ambiguous than the previous one. I feel like Ventress' story was very much like Asajj making big decisions, but clear decisions, and sort of developing a character further. Where I feel this was sort of showing you the character development in Cad Bane as a child, and then sort of the issue sort of with his child, and it was quite ambiguous. But I mean, let's just go to you first, Kat. What was your thoughts on seeing Cad Bane and sort of his rise from sort of squalor to, being a very suave and sophisticated bounty hunter?
This completely surprised me as a character arc, because when we first meet Cad Bane in the Clone Wars, he is this cold, money-driven bounty hunter who is very thoughtful in his actions. He doesn't go in all guns blazing. He's very controlled, very thoughtful. And that's not the character we're introduced to on Juro. This young Colby is playful, he's quite erratic and very expressive. So it's a bit of a shock at first that how different he is from the character we initially know. And I thought it was a very interesting pairing to have him with Nero, because the two of them come from the same life. They are both street rats on a deprived part of Juro. They're scrounging on the streets trying to survive and being ignored by the masses, even though they need help from someone else to really try and do well in the world. So when Laszlo comes along and offers them this job and a chance at a better future through a life of crime, Colby is very interested. He wants to better his life. And Nero is far more cautious. And you can see the divergence starting right there about the two different paths these characters are going to take. And they're a foil for each other. Again, both come from basically the same beginnings, but both have such different endings. One is a law enforcer, the other literally goes against the law. And it really made these 3 episodes absolutely fascinating, because the interplay between Cad Bane and Nero was always tinged with the memories from their past. And yeah, I didn't expect to care about these characters so quickly, but I really enjoyed this character arc.
Yeah, it was sort of. I didn't know what to expect, but then this was unexpected, if that makes sense. Which I suppose is good. Ian, over to you, sort of against your thoughts on the Cad Bane origin story, and I suppose where it leaves Cad Bane going off to next.
Yeah, it was really interesting. You see over the course of the arc, you see obviously him making the wrong decisions, but I think one thing this arc didn't do, it didn't humanize Cad Bane as we've seen. Like, he is a ruthless, cold-blooded killer, and I thought, could this potentially humanize him a bit? But not really. I think he's fully aware that the kid is his son, and he just leaves. He's very much a ruthless bounty hunter. He's, like Kat said, he's only interested in credits and that. So it didn't really humanize him. In fact, it made it a bit more infuriating. Like, you could have had this life with this woman that you loved and raised a kid, but that's not who he is. He's, like I said, he's ruthless. He's cold blooded. So yeah, I think they did a good job in not humanizing him, and he is a villain at the end of the day. He'll always be a villain until we see his end in the Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, no, it was really good. I thought it's a story. It's a story as old as time. This arc, like two friends, one goes the right way, one goes the wrong way. I think we've seen that arc play out across multiple different stories in cinema and TV. I think they did it really well. I thought the visuals on it were really, really good. I think it was a beautiful episode. And yeah, I like the fact that Cad Bane's imminent arrival. Everyone's like, "Oh, there's going to be trouble here." And yeah, I like how they did these episodes. Like I said, I was pleasantly surprised. I will put their up this just behind the Dooku episodes of Tales of as the best ones. To be fair,
I liked how sort of you see how Colby or Cad is sort of very, what's the word? I wouldn't say he's groomed by by Laszlo, but you know Laszlo shows him the life, shows him the money, shows him sort of the type of things they can do, like live free and die hard type of thing, like almost like the old West gunslingers who, you know, you're eating well and you're drinking well one day and you could die the next in a gunfight and that's fine. And I like how it showed how Colby was sort of very much incentivized by that and liked what he saw as a youngster and was almost groomed by Laszlo and sort of becoming a second Laszlo almost, you could say. You know, he even takes the hat. He takes his style from Laszlo, his mentor, you could say. Where Nero sort of the opposite, when Nero sort of goes along with it because they've got nothing better to do and does like the money and having the food. But then when it comes to sort of doing sinister things, he's very much half-hearted in that. And then obviously, you know, turns full good guy and is like a by-the-book cop, as we see in the series. Jason, over to you. Just, again, the animation expert, just your thoughts on this Cad Bane origin story and sort of and where it leaves Cad Bane to go next.
Yeah, no, I again thoroughly enjoyed this. It was interesting to see, obviously, a young Cad Bane as or Colby, and it sort of explained how obviously he had a tough life. He was offered this, as you just said, he was like shown the good life, and he had the choice of either taking the moral side and thinking, no, this isn't right, or thinking, no, I've had a tough life, I've had to do everything, I'm going to start taking for myself. And, then seeing it the way it goes, and obviously seeing Colby escape but Nero's caught, it was sort of like, oh, obviously Nero, then you think, goes to prison, you know, gets caught and turns to this different life. But obviously, that's not what we see. Um, Nero rights himself, and then Cad is living his life and joined the Underworld. And this is very much a story of how someone can be drawn into an underworld and corrupted by wanting what more and more. And I thought they did it really, really well. Cad Bane, again, we now know where he got his inspiration from Laszlo. And then we see Cad Bane as, suddenly ready to off this marshal. But it's quite interesting then. Obviously, I think everyone was shocked by the story that Cad Bane has a child, and the beginning of that particular part of the art, One Good Deed, you're looking at it. You think Cad Bane, he's come back because it's almost like set up as if he's coming back for the love of his life, who's now with Nero. But even with the revelation that he's got a child, suddenly Cad Bane, did Cad Bane think, I'm just heartless, I don't care, I've got a child? Or is it at this point that he's a bounty hunter? I couldn't bring a child into this world, but I'm stuck in it. And that's something that leaves us, in quite an interesting situation of what is Cad Bane's mentality. And so now, in these 3 episodes, rather than being a completely evil character or completely corrupted character, we suddenly see a more human side, or I don't want to say human because obviously he's not, but he's suddenly got emotions possibly there, but he's buried them. And yeah, it's quite I think it was really well done and interesting to see this different side of the character. And it's something that, again, they could explore it. I think possibly with Cad Bane, this could possibly, unless he turns up in other series where he's at at the same sort of point as Bounty Hunter and everything. But I think this is possibly the swan song for him, which, and rather than leaving it as he was this evil character, that there was a reason for why he ended up as he is, and that he's got a lot more levels. But yeah, again, it's the beauty of these tales. A lot of these tales episodes in all of the series is, one, they give us almost a little bit of closure on characters, but at the same time they give us other little tidbits that are like, I want to find out more. So they've opened up that story even further, which is really clever. And it's really well done by Dave Filoni.
I like that. I like how sort of we get maybe Cad Bane's beginning, we get it at the very end of his storytelling. Because, like I said, I don't think he's going to appear much more. I mean, he could touch wood, but I don't think we're going to get much more of him. So it's very George Lucas-esque, I suppose, to go back and tell the beginning of the story last, which was pretty cool. I also enjoyed Cad Bane's sort of relationship with Laszlo, and I thought when he takes the hat, it reminded me of Indiana Jones and Last Crusade when you see young Indy, played by Rua Phoenix, sort of tries to help and gets the cross, and then sort of the rival gang who has the black hat and the jacket, he gives him the hat, doesn't he? He says, just, you lost today, kid, but it doesn't mean you had to like it, and gives him the hat type of thing. And it wasn't quite like that, but it was sort of similar. It made me think of that, is what I would say. So I did enjoy those little sort of connections to previous Lucasfilm work and George Lucas connections. I think that's everything I want to say about Tales of the Underworld. I think we probably could have had like 5 arcs. I mean, there's so many bounty hunters that we love in Star Wars, right? So we could have had like 5 or 6 arcs, each following from bounty hunter, and that would have been awesome. But I can understand why it follows a certain path. Kat, any closing thoughts on this arc or the previous arc?
No, I completely agree with Jason about how that ambiguity of Bane learning about his son played out. I really did think that was quite a fitting ending, because it makes you question the title of the episode. Is Bane's one good deed that he had a son, or is his one good deed walking away from his son? Because if he had brought Isaac with him, then he would have been an exact replica of Cad Bane. So in that moment, is it Cad realizing that the life he's chosen has left him with nothing? He doesn't have Aaron. He doesn't have his best friend. He has nothing. And he willingly then walks away from his son because he doesn't want his son to have nothing. So I do really like the ambiguity of that ending, because it doesn't take away from Cad Bane's ruthless character and his almost psychopathic nature. So to have it be like that was, I think, possibly some of the best writing in these episodes.
It certainly was. I look at it a different way, and that's, I suppose, Star Wars is from a certain point of view, as Obi-Wan Kenobi famously said when he starts twisting things. I'm not saying I 100% believe this, but like one thought I have had is that one good deed maybe talks about Nero obviously raising someone else's son and taking in someone else's partner, and then how Nero sort of does that with the goodness of his heart, and then Cad Bane does the opposite. Almost seems like he walks away from the child, as if they've both made different decisions there. If that makes sense. But that's just a thought. It's not too much. I don't 100% buy that, but it's just an idea that popped in my head when I was watching it. Iain, any closing thoughts on this arc? Anything else we discussed?
No, I think the guys have said everything that has really been said. Like I said, really enjoyed it overall. I'm enjoying the fact that we get these stories on May 4th. Seemingly that it's now a yearly tradition. So yeah, just excited to see what the next Tales of will be on May 4th, 2026.
That's a perfect segue, because I want to know, like, what do you guys think could be next? Let's go to you, Iain, first, Iain.
I would love, it's not going to happen, but I would love Tales of the Mandalorians, and it all breaks down Tar Vizsla and his coming into the Jedi Order, creating the Darksaber, and then the Darksaber obviously being stolen from the Jedi Temple in the Old Republic. The reason I don't think that'll happen is because they don't really know what the Old Republic will look like in its broad sense in canon. So that would be my dream one. For one that I could see happening, I could definitely see happening. I'm trying to think, Tales of. I'm trying to think, Tales of. And I could see more bounty hunter arcs happening with like Boba Fett and that type of thing.
Could indeed. Kat, over to you.
I think the next one we're going to see, or one I would like to see, is Tales of the Rebellion, but focusing on less known Rebellion characters. And I would love an arc featuring Kez Dameron as part of the Rebellion Special Forces unit and gathering intelligence for the Rebellion, or fighting alongside Han Solo at some point.
That would be pretty awesome. Jason, Tales of, which one are you going with?
That's a difficult one because there are so many different ones, but similar to what Ian said, I'd like to see Tales of the Old Republic, although we're supposed to be getting that in a film almost, or Dawn of the Jedi. So I don't know. This is a problem. There's so many that they could do, or Tales of the Stormtroopers, different Stormtroopers, how they became Stormtroopers. That'd be a different one.
That'd be pretty cool. I would love Tales of the Sith, but then I wouldn't want it to focus on like the Sith we know, like Vader, Dooku, Maul, Palpatine. I'd love to focus on like in like Old Republic era. Like, can we get an arc on Darth Bane and then maybe an arc on Darth Revan or Darth Malgus, or one of those sort of old school Siths? If that makes sense. That's what I would love. I think you'd also do Tales of like the High Republic, and you can maybe do some High Republic animation here. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Kat. I know you're a High Republic fan, and you can maybe revisit some of the characters from the High Republic, or you can even go sort of to the end of the High Republic and maybe focus on some of the things that tie into the Acolyte. We know Acolyte's not coming back for a second season of live action, but you can maybe tell some stories around this with animation.
Oh, definitely. I think Tales of the High Republic would be absolutely fantastic. You could easily have a free episode arc featuring just Keith Trennis. She's an amazing character who I think a lot of fans would recognize. Tales of Elzar Mann. What's he doing, and what
Would,
trouble is he causing
would
for
that be
the
PG
hypergenic
rated for Elzar Man?
I do really like his character. And I I don't know. They could also even tie it in of you could have Tales of the High Republic, but it's looking at like Yoda and Yaddle during that time.
That would be cool. It would tie in as well because we've had the end of Yaddle in Tales of the Jedi. Then we could have sort of the beginning of, well, not the beginning, but like the middle part of Yaddle, I suppose. In that, I think that wraps up all the Tales talk for me. Haven't spoken to some of you guys in a while, so Kat, any Star Wars purchases since we last spoke? Any cool merch turned up?
I may have bought the Lego Star Wars Kylo Ren helmet, and it might be built on my desk right next to me right now.
Awesome. Does it look great?
It looks so much better in real life, honestly. The product photos do it dirty because in the product photos, they've like erased all the shadows, so it doesn't seem to have any depth. But in real life, the visor is properly set back within the helmet, and it actually has a lot of depth, and it looks so much better than on the product photos. So if you are considering getting it and think it looks a bit dodgy in the product photos, it looks 10 times better in real life.
Awesome stuff. Jason, any Star Wars purchases since we last spoke?
Yeah, because obviously yesterday was and more, and I got some nice little merch which I'll be sharing some images. I also got a really really cool hand drawn B2 emo done by. I, I'm having a memory blank now. And just Jake Blunt Davies, who was obviously one of the graphics guys on Andor, and or one of the designers of the creatures and droids. And yeah, the, I'm really really chuffed to have a real cool piece of artwork which he kindly signed on the back of. Um, and I've got plenty of pin badges. I've got you one, Pete. So yeah, it was an amazing event. I'm not going to say too much because I'm hoping we're going to be able to do an episode and hopefully get Dave Tree, who organised the event, on to talk about what how it all happened and his plans for possibly more, because I think there was a real big demand for this. Um, it was really a chance to find out behind the scenes information, see behind the scenes stuff, and talk to the guys that actually made the show. And by all accounts, Lucasfilm and Disney are keen to find out if there's a demand for this. And having been there, it was an amazing day. So hats off to everyone who did the presenting. Mark Newbold, Mark Mulcaster, and Barry Gingell. Brilliant, brilliant presenting. And also Martin Keegler, I'm going to give you a shout out because not many people probably knew who he was, but he stage managed the whole thing. And it was just a really great day. Mark from Jedi News joined me as well, and I think it's safe to say we both were blown away by how brilliant it was. Obviously, it was easy for me because I only live 45 minutes away from the event. But yeah, it was an event that was completely different to your general Comic Con. It was almost like a whole day of panels where you didn't have to queue because you already had your ticket. So you just got in there and enjoyed every second of it. And yeah, I can't say much more than that. But yeah, that was my little purchases. My daughter Lila got a rather cool piece of digital artwork of a it looked like a female Zabrak, very much in the style of Darth Maul. But it was yeah, it was a great event, and I'm hoping that they're going to do many more.
Ian, any Star Wars purchases recently that are rocked up at your door?
Yeah, recently, in the last couple of days, I got the Acolyte visual guides, which I've been skimming over. Really cool. Interesting to go over some of the concepts and the ideas behind some of the parts of the show. I also got the Anakin Skywalker Clone Wars Ahsoka figure from Ahsoka season one that just turned up today. So yeah, no, they're my two purchases recently.
I finally been opening boxes. I've got boxes of things I've bought that have arrived over the past few months, maybe longer, that I've never actually opened from the actual packaging that they've been sent in. So I ordered a few things from the Echo Based Trading Group on Facebook. It was a couple of Star Wars Funko Pops and some Infinity figures. I believe someone put them for sale. It was just for the price of postage, so I took them up on that offer. And it did come with a fantastic star map. So essentially a map of the entire Star Wars galaxy. And it's from like the 90s Star Wars fact file. So some of that might not even be canned anymore, but I thought it was a really cool piece. You can see that unboxing is on our TikTok, so Star Wars Podcast on TikTok, you can see that. And I also opened up a delivery from Hasbro Pulse, which was a Hasbro Black Series 6-inch figure. It was Obi-Wan Kenobi as the Jedi Legend. So that's Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of the Kenobi series when he sort of meets Luke and gives him the Skyhopper toy just before he meets Qui-Gon, basically. So it comes with a soft goods cape, the lightsaber, the goggles, and of course the Skyhopper, which is really cool. So you can see those on our TikTok. I've got loads more stuff to unbox. What's inside these boxes? I have a little inkling, but some of it's a surprise as well because they've been out that long. So definitely come along on that journey. I don't know if you guys saw this, but obviously it is the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, which we've mentioned a few times here on the show. They are releasing a anniversary version of the album, so the score by John Williams, on vinyl, and it's like a lava coloured vinyl. I don't know if anybody loves vinyl here. Kat, you're going to buy some Star Wars lava vinyl?
It does look really cool. I might because my dad has a record player anyway, and I think I have the anniversary edition for. I can't remember which one, but I do have the Star Wars anniversary edition vinyl for. It might be Empire Strikes Back, but Revenge of the Sith is one of my favorite soundtracks. I'm sorry, Battle of the Heroes is just fire, literally and figuratively.
It is indeed. Ian, are you going to get a vinyl? And also, I know you're a big book man. Have you pre-ordered this special version of the novel by Matthew Stover?
I have, yeah. I haven't. I won't be getting the vinyl because I don't have a vinyl record player. But yeah, I have pre-ordered the Matthew Stover special edition Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary novelisation, which I'm really excited for. It's quite an expensive purchase, £45, a lot for a book, but it does look good. So I'll I'll let you know what that looks like when it comes in November. I believe it's out.
Is that still
October,
up for
November.
pre-order?
I think so, mate. Yeah.
I might have to send us the link because I haven't seen where the link is, but I do fancy that. Jace, do you fancy yourself limited edition Star Wars vinyl?
It's a rabbit hole that I would never go down because I wouldn't be able to stop myself. And as a child, obviously I'm a little bit older than the rest of you guys, and vinyl was very much my that, and cassettes were my beginning of my audio listening, and I did wreck a few of my mum and dad's vinyls, and I'm almost too scared to touch anything like that these days. I have looked at it and they look absolutely awesome. But yeah, it just scares me too much. It's a rabbit hole that if I went down it, it would cost me a small fortune. I love my favourite thing is sitting down in the evening and just listening to Jeff Wayne's Water Worlds, and that's been released several times on different vinyl, and I would have loved to have got that, but again, I just scare myself too much. So it's something that I admire from afar.
I am mentally sending you the meme of Palpatine going, "Do it, do it, Jason. Buy all the vinyl, buy it." I've recently downloaded Vinted, and I'm just looking at batches of wrestling cards. I don't even collect wrestling cards, but I think I'm going to start collecting wrestling cards. And it's another rabbit hole, and it's more money, but it's who I am. I think that brings an end to this week's episode. Kat, any closing thoughts on where can the people find you on social media?
Just that it's great to see having more Star Wars animation to talk about and looking forward to whatever might be next in the animated world. And you can find me at CatKyle on Twitter, where I'm always happy to talk anything Star Wars, Kylo Ren, or Lego.
Iain, any closing thoughts, and where can the people find you on socials?
No closing thoughts, mate. They can find me at Star Wars Ian on Twitter and Instagram.
Jace, where can the lovely people find you?
Yeah, I'm just going to correct something that I said. Jake Lunk Davies was or is a concept designer, not a graphics guy. So I'll correct that in case I get into trouble. I just, keep enjoying Star Wars. Look forward to anything else that they chuck at us. And as always, at Hondo Ling.
You can find myself on social media. I am on X and Instagram at the Geordie Jedi Pete. You can also find the podcast on X, formerly Twitter, at BorsStar. And you can also find the podcast on everywhere else, basically Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, at Star Wars Podcast. If you are leaving a review anywhere, you can do that on Apple Music and on Spotify. Please leave us a 5-star review, a lovely sentence. Keeps us smiling all week, only takes you a few moments, and it does help people find the show. And if you are leaving reviews, please send us them on social media. We might just send you some goodies in the post. And if you're listening to any of the other wonderful podcast applications out there and it has the feature leave a review, leave us a great one. Again, let us know about it, and we might get you some goodies in the post. But that's the end of another fantastic episode of Star Wars. May the Force be with you all, and remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.